What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are back with my series where we look at the best fighters in the world. I give you 5 things they are exceptional at with tips so you can improve as you're watching this video. And today we are focusing on one of the Muay Thai greats, Saenchai. I put out a poll recently of 4 fighters asking you guys which person you wanted me to cover next in this series, and Saenchai was the resounding choice. So let's roll the intro and jump into this episode. Alright guys, Saenchai, one of the greatest Muay Thai fighters of all time, right at my weight class, and somebody I hope to meet up with before we both retire. And because of that, I'm going to do this episode a little different today. Instead of just looking at these fighters and going, okay, what are they really good at? I specifically looked at Saenchai and went, what would I look at his biggest assets and the things that I would train for if I was competing against him. If that happens down the road, we can get the fight made. I will definitely be using some tactics to avoid the things that we're going to focus on today, because these are the biggest threats to me, or the biggest things that I notice is being threats. So let's start off with point number 1. And that for me is his evasiveness. His ability to not take damage, to not get hit. Now, when I fought Lerdsila, who is a very similar sort of stylist to Saenchai, I was able to break through and land some shots, but still a very difficult fighter to land on. Well, Saenchai is very similar to that. Saenchai is a southpaw, but he is very good at evading kicks up to head level. He's good at hollowing out and avoiding them down to leg level. But even more impressive to me is his ability to deal with boxing. Whereas Lerdsila would drop his hands and just use lots of head evasion, which is incredible, Saenchai is fantastic at implementing a long guard. So if somebody throws at him, whereas I would keep my hands very tight, Saenchai will go to a long guard and lean his head back out of the way. So any shots that sneak through are going to miss, and then when you try and come with lunging shots, his arms are up and he's able to catch. Makes it very difficult for especially the foreign fighters who are trying to implement boxing on him. Makes it very difficult for them to be effective with that. Now obviously I'm not going to share today the tips and tactics that I would use to break through these points that I give you on Saenchai. I already have in my mind how I would get by this, how I would try to break down that super evasiveness of him. But if I tell you guys now, then if the fight happens down the road, I have no game plan. It's out there, everybody knows what's going to be coming, it's not good for me. So that is my own little secret for today. But if you want to be like Saenchai and start engaging in this long guard, you have to remember a couple of things. First of all, the long guard leaves you more exposed to get caught with a shot you don't see coming. When you're in here and you're tight, you're safe to a certain extent. I mean, shots can still come through, but it's harder for big mistakes to happen. But when you're back here and you're leaning, if you're not super high level and you get caught with your chin high and your body weight backwards, and maybe somebody comes up the middle with an uppercut, or they come around one of these arms with a hook, it's very dangerous. So you need to make sure you don't just go in and try this in the fight for the first time. You need to have somebody standing in front of you, throwing shots, and you're practicing. As soon as you see punch movement, you lean back, you get those arms high, and you're able to either pick the wide shots off by flexing that elbow up and ultimately blocking, or you block the middle shots with little parries. Very important that you practice this over and over, because if you don't, you're going to be on the bad side of a really hard punch. Point number 2 of what makes Saenchai so good and so dangerous is his ability to catch kicks at every level. Most Muay Thai fighters are very good at catching round kicks to body level, scooping in the round kicks, and ultimately throwing their partner, but Saenchai does it up to head level and down to leg level, which means when you are throwing kicks, more likely than not, unless you have incredible balance or you're very good at kicking and then pulling out properly, you're going to get thrown for it. And that makes him a very scary fighter, because we already talked about the fact it's hard to land hands on him. But now when you let your kicks go, you're not going to be able to throw many of them before you get caught and dumped. Very frustrating guy to deal with, because your offense is just so difficult to get going. Now Saenchai's long guard, which we just talked about, his hands out here, plays a big part in his ability to catch kicks. If I'm in here, it's much more difficult to wrap up as opposed to out here where I reach, I'm staying that much safer. For example, if somebody throws a body round kick and they try to fake up to head level and I have my hands here and I reach out, there's a good chance that kick is going to go over top. But with my hands out here with the reach, if the guy fakes, I'm just going to get the kick caught on my forearm before I probably wrap it up or just bat it down. If you guys want to get very good at catching kicks at all levels, the first thing to recognize is you have to get very good at grabbing that lead leg kick. Anytime somebody kicks down there and they make contact, you grab. From there you have the ability to throw your cross, or like Saenchai does very often, just to sweep them out. Eyesight is such an important part of catching kicks. Obviously, Saenchai's eyesight is exceptional. You need to have that to be evasive with head punches. Very similar to the last point, if you want to get good at this type of game, this type of catching, you just need to put somebody in front of you, have them pitter-patter some punches at you so you can pick them off, and then they throw a single kick, and you try to catch it. Comes to body level, you catch, Trying to remember very often that if you can add a little step away from the kick, if the guy throws the right round kick and I can step away to the body, I can minimize the damage of that shot, which makes it easier for me to pick up and catch without getting my arm banged or my ribs damaged in any way. Point number 3 on what makes Saenchai so good are the tricks that he can impose in the fight. He's not somebody that just stands there and just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, like many fighters. He's always making it very difficult to anticipate what he's going to do next because he throws so many odd techniques, one of which is the cartwheel kick, which I just talked about the other day. But he has many other odd techniques where, he'll jump in the air, and instead of jumping and throwing high, he'll jump and he'll kick low. As soon as you see somebody take to the air, you right away go, oh shoot, my head. But then he just attacks the low kick. His ability to throw so many techniques. I've seen him throw spinning techniques, seen him throw cartwheel kicks, the low kicks, the axe kicks. He's just all over the place. He's not what you would call a traditional Muay Thai fighter in the sense he just stands there and bangs round kicks off your arms. It makes him very unpredictable, very difficult to read, and he's just very creative. Being very creative is just something that's hard to deal with in the fight. If you guys want to get better at being creative like Saenchai, you really need to take your mind outside that idea that every shot I throw has to be a knockout shot. When he's throwing these tricky little shots, they're not knockout shots, they're not even damaging shots, but they are going to help control the pace of the fight, and they're going to make his opponents a little bit hesitant just because they don't know all the odd things that are going to be coming. They're things they're not used to training. If I was going to be fighting Saenchai, this is the only tip that I will be giving you guys today on what my game plan would be. I would have an opponent across from me during pad work, during every sort of drill that we do, throwing these crazy kicks, throwing cartwheel kicks, throwing those jumping low round kicks, just so they're not odd to me, they're not going to throw me off in the fight. That's a big part of getting comfortable with somebody's game plan who is different, who is odd, they have different style. You have a whole training camp to get used to it so that when it happens in the fight, it doesn't throw you off. When you're in the bag the next time, if you want to get better at this type of stuff, you can come down, throw your cartwheel kick, you can move around, throw those kicks, you can do your Brazilian kicks, and just let those legs go without thinking they need to be knockout techniques. They are really the techniques that set up the next point we're going to talk about, and that is Saenchai's cross. He's a southpaw. His cross is surprisingly good for a Muay Thai fighter. It's not something he sets up like jab, jab, hook, cross. It's just something that allows him, based on all the tricky things he throws and the fact that people are worried about those sort of things, that he can just come with a simple technique down to the body or up to the head and be very effective in constantly landing because people are nervous. They're nervous about those head kicks. They bring their hands high. He has this long guard. He's able to just put one hand out in their face and then tag them to the body fairly hard. Or he's also very good when somebody gets too aggressive with their boxing and he thinks, okay, they're going to get by the guard and I won't be able to block anymore. He just gets his head off the center line and he throws his counter cross, which very often lands and stops those aggressive opponents in their tracks. Everything that we're talking about, you see how it all kind of plays together. His cross is not on its own. It works because of everything else that we've talked about. And I just did a video the other day, you can check it out here, about landing the body cross, and I talked about throwing a jab, blinding their vision, and then hitting. Well, Saenchai does that to a certain extent with that long guard. He's out here, if people start playing with his hands, you know, two guys put their hands out like this and they start meeting, they start tapping, and then you land. Well, this is acting as a blinder. It's down the middle, and it's making it very difficult for somebody to see the level change and the cross coming to the body. Be sure to check out that video because it will give you some of the tips to throw the cross a little bit more like Saenchai. And one thing you will note when Saenchai throws the body cross, he keeps his body very high, his chin very high. He's lengthening out his shot so he maximizes his distance. But because his eyesight's so good, he knows that if somebody counter shots, he's going to be out of the way anyway. But I like the way that he's able to throw from such a high range. You guys can try that if you're confident in exceptional eyesight. If that's something you possess, try that and you will be very dangerous with that cross to the body. And finally, the last thing that makes Saenchai so dangerous, in my opinion, is his ability to execute throws. He can do them off catching the round kicks, or even more dangerous is in the clinch. If you fall to the clinch with him, he is very exceptional at tossing people. You will note when he throws people, it's not usually with muscle. It's not like he rushes in and just goes for a throw. He waits for movement. Now that could be on the end of somebody throwing the kick. Once you've thrown the kick, that was you engaging, and then he will toss you. Or if you're in the clinch, he'll wait for a little bit of movement, or he'll engage a little bit to get the feet moving, or he'll wait for them to throw a knee, and then he'll get that dump. His timing is exceptional, and his ability to execute throws makes it very, very difficult to want to come into a tight range with him. Even though that's something that if I was a foreign fighter, I'd be wanting to do. I'd be wanting to get in here and let my hands go. But once I get to that range, I know it's not too far for him now, especially with his long guard, to close the gap and get into that tight clinch range. If you want to get better at clinch work, and I've been saying this for a while, I am going to put out a little series on how to get better at clinching. But if you want to get better until that series comes out, you just need to get in with a partner, get hip to hip, nice and tight, and I throw a knee, I throw a knee, I throw a knee, and maybe on the third or fourth one, my partner tries to off balance me. And you keep doing it until you get successful. When you understand the timing is everything. And the timing that Saenchai has in his ability to throw people is the reason he is so successful. Not muscle. He's definitely not the strongest guy in the division. He's not even somebody that I would look at and go, oh, he's really strong at all for this weight class. But his timing is so on point, and that's just because he's done so much clinch work throughout the years. He could probably clinch and throw somebody with his eyes closed. He doesn't need to see the person. He can feel the person, feel the energy, and when it's a good opportunity to off balance that opponent. Anyway, guys, those are my 5 things that I find most threatening about Saenchai as a possible opponent. What do you guys think are his biggest assets? If I have something that I did not mention today that you just go, wow, this guy is so good, but I did not bring it up today, throw it down in the comments below. Let me know who you want me to cover next in this series. And thanks for joining today, guys. If you haven't already, give the video a like, join the channel and get subscribed if it's something you haven't already done. As always, guys, train super hard, and I'll see you back here soon for another video.